outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello, everybody. We're back. I was just saying before we started, I was like, I've had Lucy withdrawals.
Oh, I've had Hannah withdrawals. I think this is like, what? Did we do this last week?
No, we didn't. Tom nicked our space.
Oh yeah, that was
the week before. Which I feel like we did something relatively sensible. Oh yeah, we did the skills, relatively sensible skills you take from teaching, in which the most obvious one is quizzing. We're very good at pub quizzes.
pub quiz. Yeah,
and it was more ridiculous the week before that when we did only teaching. Still haunting my streams online.
haunted by. I think we have to at least, no pun intended, touch on this. I mean, without going into too much detail, our phones are definitely listening to us because the algorithm, certainly on Instagram, has never quite been the same.
I know more about selling my feet than I ever wished I'd know.
Feet, socks.
Yeah.
The treading on the bread one was my personal favorite, and I've actually told people about that.
Yep.
So
how that wasn't the number one listened to show for that month is beyond me. I mean, maybe our listeners are just too highbrow for us. I don't know.
Maybe we're lowering the tone too much. I don't know. I mean, or maybe people were like, surely they were put up to this, which in theory we kind of were. Because
I only meant it as a joke. I didn't mean it.
I do take full accountability for that show because I took a joke seriously and we ended up getting a show out of it. And I still stand by it, though. I stand by it. But on a more wholesome note, Hannah, how are you doing? How's things?
I'm okay. I've become a person that I used to despise. I don't know whether that means that I've just turned old, but I have gone early. My Christmas tree is up in November. I am slightly ashamed of myself, but also last year I was meant to move and I didn't and ended up having no Christmas tree. So this year I again meant to move. The chance of that happening before Christmas now are incredibly slim, but I'm making up from last year and I've gone early and put it up. But also my Christmas tree is a bit unconventional in the fact that it is all under the sea theme. So it is summer in this horrible winter weather that we've been having, to the point where I almost thought I jinxed it. I put it up Saturday. Sunday we had a power cut from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 11 o'clock at night. Me and my friend were wandering around in candles like we were out of some kind of Jane Austen movie. We couldn't do anything. We had to go. I bailed and went to the pub.
I mean, there really is little else to do in those situations. Normally I do silently and sometimes quite loudly judge people who put their Christmas trees up in November. But when I saw yours on Instagram, I did message you straight away going, I do actually love that. So you are forgiven. You are an exception in this case. I have not. Yeah, I have not. I'm busy enjoying everything Grinch related, as I tend to this time of year, as the self-titled Grinch of TTR and indeed anywhere I tend to inhabit. So yeah, I'm enjoying. I still need to. I actually saw, because there was a pajama day in the primary of the school I'm in at the moment, and I saw a kid
who's come at home saying, "We've got a pajama day." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
There are Grinch onesies.
Maybe I need to get one of those.
I want a Grinch onesie, which has absolutely naffle to do with what we are talking about this evening. But before we do any of that, we should probably do some life admin, shouldn't we?
We should.
Before we proceed any further. So, keeping in mind that we've still got the lovely John Catt Educational, who are still there with us, with that discount, which Hannah is pointing to there, JCTTR 2425 for 20% off your order. We have also got another sponsor who I need to find the script for because I don't have it.
I'm on it. We've got Parent Kind. So Parent Kind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour, and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents. I think I was going recapping because I'm thinking, hasn't Tom already had them on his show and done a show with them?
Yes, Tom Rogers has done a sponsor show which you are able to go back and listen to. There've been so many recently because there's been the OCR Maths one, there's been the Parent Kind one, so it's actually hard to keep up. But they are all available on all your usual platforms, so do go and check them out. They are all there for your listening pleasure. Now, this evening, we're going to move on to talk about, well, this year is 10 years of the current national curriculum in England. So this is kind of a little bit niche, but also it is interesting because although we are talking about the English curriculum, this is also taught in a number of schools internationally, including one that I used to work in. So it's kind of made its way around the world. And it came into place in 2014, as we know, under when Michael Gove, I believe, was Education Secretary, which many of you, I'm sure, will famously remember as a, well, it depends how you feel, but probably a quite dark time in the education world. Although, if we reflect back on, without getting too political, on Conservative leadership and education secretaries, it did become quite the running joke, which would have been funny if it wasn't also as concerning as it was during that time. Now, of course, this national curriculum, I mean, 10 years, Hannah, I don't know about you, it feels like a long time, but a short time. But do you think, I mean, because we're sort of sitting here as one primary and one secondary here. I mean, just kind of, you know, from having been a part of it, having had to teach it for the last however long, do you think it has aged well?
Oh, that's a big question to start with, Lucy.
Throw you in there.
I'm going to say the art curriculum, certainly from that point of view, probably not overly. Arts is only 2 pages long and is very kind of vague. And as the years have gone on, it talks about kind of obviously studying lots of different artists and talks about kind of craft people and designers and architecture and architects. And it seemed to have been, there was a big kind of sudden jump on that by Ofsted because it's very vague and you could go anywhere. And art teachers are very qualified in lots of different areas, but all Ofsted inspectors picked up on the fact that not many people had architecture in their curriculum. And it became this big thing within the art world over probably the last 5 years that Ofsted were going in and like literally hunting for do you teach architecture? Where is it in your schemes of work? And kind of hunting for it. So, and for me, like, I don't think that's, yes, it like kids know what architecture is. It's important that we cover that, but I don't think it's like the be all and end all if we don't go into massive detail or it's not covered in like a big way. So for me, it's kind of that kind of thing. It definitely does need updating, but also it just needs wording correctly. And I think the wording necessarily hasn't kind of sustained itself well within the last 10 years. And kind of looking at the way things have changed and things have developed, people are very into kind of picking things apart. I've enjoyed the kind of DV kind of reviews that have come out that are a lot more detailed and a lot more specific, but it does seem to be that people aren't necessarily picking them up. Like I've changed schools and nobody in the trust had even heard of that, and I did a presentation on it. I was like, that came out in kind of like 6 months before I'd started at a school and nobody had kind of read it and discussed it. Whereas for me and my geeky teacher mates, we would like waiting for it the second it came out to dissect it and chat about it and have conversations about it. So I think it's one of those, I don't know how much people pay attention to it as much as it used to. I don't think it has that, unless it's the big O and you have to tick a box. But like, how much is that people are being held exactly to it, and how much are people holding it like the Bible to like a high regard that everything has to be followed word by word. I don't know.
I think certainly less so now. And of course, you've got to think in that last 10 years, a lot has happened, including a global pandemic in which, it became a very different beast because everything went online. And regardless of the subject you were teaching, you had to make it work. So for a subject like yours that relies very much on you being in the room and, with a lot of different, equipment and bits and pieces and things that you need, suddenly when you have that taken away from you, but you've still got curriculum to cover, leaves you in a very sort of weird spot. The reason I'm waving my phone around, by the way, for those of you, is not because I'm sort of trying to multitask or anything like that. It's because I took a highlighter to the current national curriculum and I did it online, but I was going to split my screen and then decided it was too confusing. But I'm not going to take you, chapter and verse through the current English curriculum because I feel like that would make dire radio. But I just want to pick out kind of the original premise and bits and pieces, just because I think they're worth reflecting on. So, of course, we know that national curriculum needs to be in every state-funded school and balanced and broadly based. Okay, we come back to this time and time again, balanced and broadly based, promotes the spiritual, moral, cultural, mental, and physical development of pupils at the school and of society, and prepares pupils at the school for the opportunities, responsibilities, and experiences of later life. It says so much and yet so little, I feel, with that.
And it is this like broad and balanced and things, but like what does that mean? And it means different things to different people. And the thing that I've also noticed as well, obviously since 10 years ago when this kind of was written, obviously a lot of people have now moved into academy chains, and it doesn't necessarily apply to them in the same way because it's suggested that they follow the national curriculum, isn't it? It's not set in stone that they have to do it, which I always found really shocking because especially when I moved trust and I was like, right, one of the schools I was at was unfortunately due to teaching and the way things went, couldn't afford to keep the DT department going. So it's like, right, I was like, as the art department, and this has happened multiple times throughout my career because it's just one of those subjects that's really hard to recruit into, and it's also a really expensive department to run. So schools, I completely get it. But I was like, right, so do you want me to absorb that subject? Do you want me to make sure I've got a document that ticks off where all the national requirements for DT are hit across other subjects, whether it be COGS and things like that in science and physics, or the computing elements go into kind of computer science? I've got a document that can talk through to make sure that Key Stage 3 are hitting it. I've got some schemes of work that I can alter and change and add things into, so they get an opportunity to do all of that. It was like, no, we're out of the Ofsted window. We don't need to follow the national curriculum. I was like, okay. So it's yeah, I find that quite interesting that it's not kind of taken as seriously as I would. And I think it's always one of those, isn't it? It's are you using it to make sure that your kids and your students, who are the priority and should always be the priority, are getting that broad and balanced curriculum? Or are you kind of using it as kind of like a, yeah, I'm completely doing that. Like, yeah, I feel like I feel like it's like that when you nag that person to do something, they're like, yeah, I'll get around to it. I'll do that. I'll 100% do that. I will, yeah. And then they never move and they never do it. And it's like, I feel like it's that kind of like, you should do it, but I don't know how well people actually fully commit to it and are like 100%, yeah, like I'm going to do that and I'm going to do it well. I don't think necessarily exists as much as it potentially should.
No, and I think that there are large parts of it that people are enormously hacked off with. I mean, I was having a look through the Key Stage 1 and 2 English requirements, and those who've been with TTR for a long time will know that I have gone on ad nauseum about my feeling towards the teaching of certain grammar points to children who can't even use a full stop properly, and the equivalent, and year 6 is having to sit the equivalent of an advanced linguistics test, aged 11, and the stress associated with that. I absolutely appreciate, and we'll kind of come to this when we sort of talk about our dream curriculums and kind of what we sort of think the curriculum review that's happening at the moment, and the research is just, or the panel has just closed for. But children need to be literate, they need to be able to read and write. But I've for a long time, in fact for the entire time I've been a teacher, strongly questioned the need for knowing what a fronted adverbial is aged 8, when I didn't know what one was until the age of 26. And by that point, I had a master's degree, and was teacher training. So, yeah, there is that. Like fronted adverbials. Yes. And I still dine out on that story, and I will do forever. And I just think that there are certain things in there that certainly do not need to be in there for the younger ones amongst us.
And that's the thing, as a dyslexic mother, that kind of, I got a B for it in my English, and I'm very proud of that. And in my day, oh God, I'm going back, I'm so old. I got told I didn't let my age today, so I'm well chuffed. But in my day, I'm just so dyslexic. When I spelt stuff wrong, they'd make me write it out. And my one was they, because I spelled they THAY, because
phonetically
in my dyslexic head, that's how it worked. To the point where the teacher got so annoyed with me in primary school, she made me write it out 100 times. Halfway through, I swapped back to THAY and didn't notice, and just wrote it out about 50 times the wrong way. But to now have my son, and he's got one of the big platforms that he's doing, he's in year 3, and he comes home and he has to do these kind of timed things with different like nouns and adjectives and adverbs, and I'm like, he's 7. He's also been an SRB for 3 years because he can't talk properly, and now like doing programs which I can't pause because it blocks the question and you can't see it. It's against the timer, so he's getting upset and crying because he's never getting the medals that he wants to do unless I literally cheat and help with him, in which case I have Googled the hell out of everything to know what I'm doing beforehand, because even the instructions I'm a bit like, and I'm like, I have now got a distinction in my level 7 apprenticeship in senior leadership, and I don't know what any of these things that my 7-year-old is trying to learn. Like I appreciate, from a love of my subject, that I wish people appreciated my subject more. I appreciate it being friends with English teachers, that there are some really important key things, and if you learn them properly, it can really improve your writing and the way you describe things and the way you kind of talk and do things. I completely understand that. But I'm also like, I feel like we've gone the far extreme, and that we shouldn't be making children feel inadequate and anxious and disappointed if they don't understand all this at a really young age,
and don't know what a determiner is.
Yeah, I could literally take half the things in his quizzes and probably take them and present them to some of my low ability year 11s, and they wouldn't be able to pass and get a medal either. So it is that kind of like, I love the research, I love the theory, I know it, and also love all like this whole tech thing and having games that kids can do, but also it needs to be a positive experience.
And a reasonable one. And it's, certainly it's on my hit, probably top of my hit list actually when it comes to this curriculum. And I do think that, SPAG testing, so spelling, punctuation and grammar testing, as a sort of isolated thing, it's got to go. Why? What is it for? Why is it there? Why are we devoting, and there are still schools that do this, even though I don't know if it's as much of a thing again, to actual SPAG lessons. And they are dry as hell to plan. They are dry as hell to teach. And I've done shows where I've kind of talked about this and talk about, integrating it more and kind of, sort of almost kind of subliminally and subtly doing it through your English teaching. But there needs to be more of that and less of the explicit teaching of, grammar points and punctuation points that are, quite frankly, too advanced for most of us. So there is.
It's one of those, it's like, trying to tick boxes for the national curriculum and using all these fancy things, which are great. There's another one that I got sent home the other week, which I literally, as an art teacher, struggled with to the point where I put it in there's a group where I live called Babes with Babies and then our city. So I put it out there and I was like, does anybody know what on earth? I got sent this homework with no context. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I'm a teacher and I don't even understand it. But it was a vocab visualizer where I think it says something about drawing a word and bringing them to life. Do you want to know what words my 7-year-old had to do?
Go on.
We had vivid, which I could do. I could do vivid colours. Bear in mind, my child can't pronounce and say any of these words with his speech delay. Abundant, subdue, and my favourite one, obnoxious. So I drew some poo and went, that smelled obnoxious.
I wouldn't know. I think that's pretty good going. Vivid, vivid colours. Abundant. I suppose you could draw a lot of one thing. I don't.
Yeah, and then the following couple of weeks later, I got weary, stain, unsure, and nuisance.
I'm not confident I could spell nuisance.
Like that, but like the thing is, you're meant to draw it
as well.
and
what's the rationale behind that?
I don't know. There was no instructions. There was no rationale. But that's what I just feel it's gone a bit balmy. That we're like, we need to enrich their vocabulary. I'm like, this isn't enriching my 7-year-old's vocabulary. This is making his mother absolutely go balmy at the weekends. And I'm an art teacher. I have really tried hard. My retaliation is I'm really desperately trying to teach him. Bear in mind, he can't talk properly. Discombobulated. So that when he gets asked something at school, he goes, that's a bit discombobulating. And instead of confused, that is my trying to repel back. Basically, me and my nieces decided what word could we teach him that would be really fun to teach him and send him back into school saying, discombobulated.
Yeah.
I'm just discombobulated, sir.
But yeah, and also, the as I'm sure you know, there are certain for each year group in primary, there is a particular spelling list. Who chose these words?
Yeah.
And why do you need to, why aged 11? And again, there are some words on that list as someone who considers themselves quite literate, I wouldn't say well-read, that's not strictly true, but, certainly a fan of words. Like I play Wordle, I do spelling bees and all that kind of thing, just because I like words. But there are ones where, and I have definitely made a song and dance in my lessons in recent times where I've gone and got a dictionary and gone, I actually don't know. I actually can't, or I've just kind of had a brain fart and gone, I don't know how many S's and M's are in assembly, for example, because, I'm not dyslexic, as far as I'm aware, I'm not dyslexic. So, again, when you've got children of a certain age, who decides that those are the words you need to spell? That's ludicrous as well.
Honestly, I know, is that classic thing of them of kind of being like, oh well, when are you never, like that whole thing, like, well, you need to have to do maths because in case you don't have a calculator. And it's like, well, they've all got phones. No one's really going to be without something that they can't do maths with now. And it's kind of a bit like that. They're always going to have spell check. Yes, they need to write something that resembles the word, but if they get letters the wrong way around, it's not the end of the world. We can fix it. There are tools for this. And I get that we need to push the high ability, but it seems to have gone a bit beyond that it's now this kind of real stretch and push and at such a fast pace. And I think I've spoken to a few people today about curriculum, and I feel like that's the general consensus, is that the amount that they want us to get in with the curriculum just means everything is so fast that you don't have time to do it in really good context, in a really good way that you can apply it to everyday life and really get them to understand it, embed it, and recap it as well. It's just so quick because there's just so much.
And the proportion and the split, and again, I'm sort of speaking from primary experience, because in the English national curriculum, you get, certainly for the maths and English, you get a proper breakdown of kind of, what I say proper, you get kind of a good chunk of it. And then, of course, the foundation subjects, you get a kind of, and again, you know, those of you who want to refresh your memory or want some really rather dull bedtime reading, you can go and have a look at all this documentation yourself. But it almost kind of, from the word go, you've got, well, we need to kind of absolutely tell you, you know, what to do with maths and English, which, okay, you know, pros and cons to that. But we'll kind of give you a bit of sort of, as you've already mentioned with art, a bit of a kind of a sort of guideline, but it's not really, it's just kind of, you know, we kind of like you to cover this, and, you know, this is kind of maybe what should be included, but none of it's sort of, you know, I mean, and I don't know whether you would want something a bit more concrete, or whether you feel actually, you know, as long as we're hitting, you know, certain key points, the rest of it I'm quite happy to do myself. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Hannah.
I guess art is a little bit like that, in the fact that we have just key points that we've got to do, but how we teach them and how we structure it is very much down to ourselves, and it is very different per school, and it's very different depending on what kind of art degree the teacher had. But it is, I don't know, I just feel there needs to be something that obviously the kids have to include, because you don't want these schools that aren't necessarily run as well as they could be kind of missing out core concepts, and kids missing whole entire bits. Like, you hear the horror stories, don't you, of like kids opening exam papers and them having not read the right book or right poem or what have you, but that's just down to poor organization and poor kind of leadership. But there's also that kind of aspect of, you want them to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and it be relevant, and kind of have some kind of thing that makes it exciting and interesting for them to learn. It's this whole monotonous kind of rigor that I feel like has taken the fun out of teaching, and I don't know whether I would enjoy going to school if I had to go back and do it all over again. I don't know whether I would enjoy education as it is at the moment. I think I would do, the more I've learned, the more I learn how I learn, and I find that aspect really interesting. And I think that is more what we should be doing, in this respect that actually, if we teach the kids how to teach themselves, and the transferable skills are things that we should do. And I don't think that is, good schools will talk about that, but I don't think enough schools are talking about that, in terms of, like, I get kids and I'm like, right, we're going to do a mind map, and they've never done a mind map before, and I'm like, this is like, we do this like once a project, like a couple of times a year, like it's not anything embedded. But how am I in the art department the first time you're experiencing this, or kind of really writing, and I go into a lot about kind of opinions, and you're allowed to dislike and like a piece of art or hate it, but you have to justify your opinion, and how we discuss that, and being able to kind of articulate an argument both verbally and writing it down as well. They're really important, and being able to kind of justify yourself. But a lot of kids kind of, I'm like, right, what does justify mean? They like haven't met that word before. But I think these are the transferable skills that can kind of bounce from one subject to another. And kind of, for me, especially, like, everyone kind of undermines the art, but actually the big one with art is resilience and problem solving. Like, they actually get more marks if they do things wrong in their GCSE, and they learn from that and develop their project, and they've made mistakes, than if they could just draw beautifully from the start and just draw the same thing over and over again, and then never develop and never take a risk. They don't get as higher marks. And I think that's the thing. We're almost kind of teaching to the test in a lot of subjects, that they just have to, you just need to do this to get this to pass, and we just need to do this to pass. And certainly, like my current school, there's so much pressure, especially with the way schools are judged on maths in English, like the pressure on those teachers and those heads of departments, because essentially they're what makes the school look good or bad when the results came up. A lot of people will judge it based on those, and it's so much pressure. And there's so much kind of like, there's debate in my school at the moment, because we're having a form room door Christmas decorating competition, which I'm highly behind.
Talked about this before.
My old school did it, and I was reigning champion of this, and so I am very much in. But the debate is like, should we let year 11s do it, because it would mean they would miss out on English, because they do extra English and maths during form time. They don't have form time, so it's like, should we allow them to join in but they'll miss out on their English or maths learning. And I'm like, oh, like school
Should need
needs
to be a discussion.
fun place as well. Everyone has gone, no, they need to let them join in, let them
Yes,
have
absolutely.
a little bit of fun. And I do get that, like, fun has to be earned. It can't be this kind of, oh, we're like, I have had my son go to a school and it's like, what did you do? We just played. Like, no, writing, maths, no, we just played. Like, I'm very, like, I don't want to be hypocritical. There has to be a balance. They have to learn. But also, we don't want to be this whole teach the test, everything's English and math. Because actually, yes, it's really important that they pass those subjects, but it isn't the end of the world for those kids if they don't. And I think there's so many people in the world that show actually, yes, that bit after when you do fail is really, really painful and quite difficult. And you have to pick yourself up and you have to work out that life isn't, you're not going to go to the college that you thought you're going to go to. You're not going to go to the college with your mates. You are going to have to pick yourself up and find a different route and work harder. But generally, those people also succeed because they have to dig in and find that resilience.
And they know what it means to have failed. And I
don't think it should be this whole pressure of like, you have to pass. If you don't, the world will end. Yeah, it's more like the world will end for the school if you don't do well, more than it will for that kid. And it creates this anxiety that's unhealthy for teachers, but also unhealthy for the students as well. But also, I do get the year 11s can be lazy and complacent and rude.
But I also think, but I also think it's valid. You know, there's a valid point in there about who is curriculum for.
Yeah,
it's for us to teach, and we have to enjoy teaching that, because otherwise, what is the point? But it's also, this is not just about, you know, when did it become about making schools look good? And, you know, all about kind of, you know, data and league tables and all of that jazz, or your kind of Ofsted score or whatever. And all of this is feeding into things like that. There is something in my mind, and when you said that, I thought there is something fundamentally wrong with that in my mind. Curriculum should be about the children that we're teaching, and then, you know, almost kind of, I do think I think they go side by side. It should be about, you know, experts in their subjects, whether it be kind of at the primary level or whether it be at secondary level, you know, and kind of what sort of, and of course the world's changing all the time. You're never going to kind of be able to kind of keep up in that, or you might do, but it has to be about the people experiencing it, delivering it and experiencing it. And when it doesn't become about that, we have a problem.
And it is that, isn't it? Is this actually part of the teacher crisis, that actually people are leaving because they're not enjoying what they're doing as much as they were? That these restrictions that have come with this kind of obsession with the curriculum is kind of meaning that people aren't enjoying what they're doing anymore.
It's become a bit kind of dictatorial. And it's interesting because I've just found a bit in here, which was kind of the whole aims of the national curriculum. And this is, I want to know what you make of this. The national curriculum is just one element in the education of every child. There is time and space in the school day and in each week, term and year to range beyond the national curriculum specifications. The national curriculum provides an outline of core knowledge around which teachers can develop exciting and stimulating lessons to promote the development of pupils' knowledge, understanding and skills as part of the wider school curriculum.
I mean, there is no time.
No.
There's no time for that. No. Absolutely no time. I mean, yeah. And I think this is the big debate, is that there isn't a huge amount of time to build those life skills as well, to make the curriculum relevant so they can take it on. I think that is the big thing that is missing for me. And that's part of the reason that I'm going off to start my new job, is kind of building resources that can go into schools to help kids build their resilience. And I think is getting kids to clock and understand why they're doing what they're doing and how it is relevant to them and how it will skill them for later on in life. They don't really understand how these things are important. Like, they don't understand how maths is important. But like, I love maths, and even though I'm an art teacher, like, I find like tracking interest rates and working out how that's going to affect me. And if I get my petrol from here, it's X amount of p cheaper. That means I save this amount on this number of litres. And it's like, that journey's cost me that amount in petrol because this is how many like miles I did. It is relevant, but it's not kind of pitched that way. it's just this is what you have to learn, this is what we're telling you, as opposed to having that. And I think that's the thing, it always needs to be slowed down and have that gap. And like, I really think what you said earlier about who is this for is really interesting. And I went and spoke to my head of English, and I was like, Jeff, can I ask your opinion on the national curriculum, just for research purposes? And she was like, I really enjoy it, but she would like a little bit more opportunities. Like, she loves the fact that she's teaching classic kind of literature, and they build it up in Key Stage 3, so they really understand it by the hit Key Stage 4. But she said it can be quite, you have to teach this, like teaching Julius Caesar to year 11 is quite dry. But actually the exam boards give you a list, and that you can pick from the list. So you can pick what's relevant to your cohort. And she said, actually, if the national curriculum did that, where you had a list of things, but you got to pick, then it's more relevant for your kids. Because I think this whole, you have to teach this to your kids. And every kid in every different city or countryside, I'm not saying like rural kids versus kind of urban kids, are going to have different opinions and different viewpoints and depending on their ethnicity and gender and where they are, they will get different things from different texts. So the school knowing their cohort and knowing who is attending that school and being able to pick the right text that can really educate them, they can get something out of it and it is appropriate for their kind of life experiences. I think it's also like, as educators, we should be having that responsibility. We should have that freedom. And same as she said, like, she really loves the classics, but George Orwell and Animal Farm is the most modern book that they teach at GCSE. And I was like, I did that at GCSE and I am old, as we have discovered. So it's like the fact that they're still teaching the same book that was taught, like, I mean, I'm talking over 20 years ago, that like it's
of Mice and Men, it's all the same stuff still being, well, I think of Mice and Men is actually finally being withdrawn.
So it's like there should be like a modern section that, again, there's a list of that they can pick from, that they can really teach the kids, where they can actually learn to love the subject, because it's very hard to teach the subject when you're being dictated what to teach and it's dry and not necessarily relevant. But I do like, she was like, they need to learn about Shakespeare, they still need to learn about the classics, and it's really important that they do. But and obviously Animal Farm with the wars and stuff, it is political and it's interesting from that point of view. But I do think there should be some freedom, and I certainly think there should be some modern text in there as well.
For sure.
And also, it's genius what she said about, like, it needs to be done like the exam board, to have a list of options and you pick what's relevant for your school, for your kids. And it could be that even you have different books for different classes because they're different abilities, and actually that's what they could access. You can have the more challenging text. But yeah, it's quite interesting.
No, it is. And also, you know, when you think about, I mean, just sticking with the kind of literature and English literature example, what about looking at how blogs are written, you know, things like that? What about, you know, copywriting, things like that, you know, all these things that
writing scripts for podcasts, because we obviously script everything and are completely organized. That's what most other people do, apparently.
I don't know what you're referring. This is a tightly run ship, Hannah. Stop.
Yes.
Stop it. I once had to teach an RE course that bored every student rigid, but pleased the planners because it was so beautifully, I think that's meant to be balanced. Each religion got an equal share. Even I was bored. And the thing is, I don't know about you, Hannah, but I really struggle to hide boredom and hide what I think. We've talked about kind of express, you know, faced with subtitles and all the rest of it. But like, it is very hard to get behind something that you do not believe in, or like me with spelling and grammar lessons, just
yeah. And I think it's especially like RE and PSHE and trying to do those things at the right times. And like I was saying, was it the other week that I'm like teaching I've got lowest set year 7 and I'm teaching them about politics. I was teaching about sexting the other week, and I'm like, it's dry, and this isn't kind of I know they need to know it, and it's important that they know it, but trying to make that a bit more exciting and a bit more relevant. And I was talking about knife crime and stuff as well. And it's like, it's important that they know all these things because it does happen. And like somebody's recently we've had stabbings where in the village over from where I live and in the city as well. Like, it is relevant, but it's like how you teach it and what you teach is also relevant. And it's just like, it is that, isn't it? It just becomes this you tick box exercise as opposed to, are the kids really engaged in this? Are they actually gaining something from it? Because that's the thing, especially with things like PSHE and RE, there is just so much to cover. It's hard to do if you spread it out. It's hard to do one thing well. Everything is kind of like just a quick, like,
and it's
we've
fiddly.
I mentioned that word. I've done that.
Yeah, it's fiddly because RE doesn't have a national curriculum. It's by diocese, I think, or by, so I can't quite remember exactly.
They've done a review. I know we had somebody did a show last year with a very interesting chat.
Maybe I might be able to shed light on that.
Yeah,
I'll put another comment.
But yeah,
and PSHE. Sorry, just PSHE just quickly became. I think it only became statutory quite recently, but I might have imagined that.
But again, that's one isn't it, I believe. I feel like Lydia might message in from upstairs in a minute. I believe that the national requirements of how many hours are associated to PSHE is now gone up. So now they meant to do at least an hour a week, and a lot of schools still haven't adjusted and changed that, and doesn't exist. So, but again, it's like one of those, like, you have to, and that's the thing. I think to get change right, it can't be a sudden, like, here, this is what it needs to change to, because that just massively adds to everybody's workload and nobody does it properly. And it's not then like, it's just a knee-jerk reaction.
Sends us all into a spiral.
It has to be this gradual, this is what it should be. And like, for all of the Oaks flaws, it was nice having, like, here is a national curriculum. If you're struggling, if you need to go and refer to it, if you've got staff off long-term sick, here is decent resources that you can go and look at, and it covers everything. So for me, there was that, but it was also like kind of that it's weird, isn't it, teaching, because everyone's kind of like this whole, the really good people will share and talk, but the people that kind of need that kind of influence and advice aren't attending to those things, aren't on edgy Twitter or LinkedIn or listening to our amazing shows and getting all this amazing insight. Because let's face it, this is the place to listen and be in the know when it comes to teaching. Okay. And I think it's difficult because then there's this constant kind of not keeping up to date with changes, not teaching as well as it could be taught, and kind of teaching badly. And then it kind of reiterates out from there and has this long-standing thing. But I feel like there should be this kind of central thing where people can collaborate and you can get really good resources. It shouldn't be this every time we change something, every time the national curriculums change, it's this kind of massive battle of who can get there first and show off kind of thing. I think I think there's a lot to be said. Like, I would have liked to have seen something like Oak, but it be this thing that teachers can submit schemes of work that would hit the national curriculum, and then there would be almost like a review body that you would review it and pick the best ones, but have loads that people can pick from, but upload them, be like, yeah, here look at these amazing resources, you can pick whichever one you want, and people get paid for submitting them to it rather than paying to receive it, like other sites where you can see like a tiny little bit and you don't know whether it's going to be any good, and you pay for it and then you don't know whether it's any good, and then they take like 50% of what you've charged for it, and you don't really see much of the money anyway. But it's one of those, like, I want to share like everything, especially with me leaving teaching. Like, I have insane lesson by lesson resources for anybody who wants them in art. Do give me a shout. That side, our Twitters are gone. We'll have to update those. But it's
I just noticed that. Sorry.
Yeah, it's one of those. Like, I love collaborating. I love sharing, but teaching is so insular, and especially I feel like since trusts have gone that, like, the trusts are so insular. Like, are you actually going and visiting other schools outside of your trust and actually communicating with other people in the outside world and actually know how your subject is changing and evolving? Like, it shouldn't be, I know that it has to be, well, it doesn't have to be, but I know that obviously there is a competition with the fact that schools are competing against each other for bums on seats. That is how they get their money. That is how they get their funding to be able to run as a school. A school is essentially a business. If they do not get enough kids in, they are not going to have enough money to pay people or keep the lights on and stuff. It is important.
And the CEO
Schools
just
are different in different areas, but it shouldn't be. It should be that we're allowed to collaborate and combine and work together. And I've seen schools work really well together that aren't in the same trust in terms of supporting kids with managed moves and finding a school that actually works and fits with them, and kind of being like, this kid is not working for us. You have him, I will have your worst one, and kind of doing little swaps, and it kind of works. And rather than these kids going on permanent exclusions and being kicked out of education, it's kind of that collaborative. So we know that schools can do it, but really we should be doing it on like a curriculum basis, and like all the like schools in the whole of the county should be, all those subjects should be together, collaborating, talking and working together, as opposed to kind of competing. But especially like was it I can't remember if it was adminning or part of, but Brent and Adam did a great show like ages ago about kind of the obviously we're in a bit of a baby boom at the moment, the period where they're at school, and actually this is going to drop off. So birth rates now go down. So primary schools will get it first and then secondary schools. But the funding, if it's still done by a child, is drastically going to drop over the next few years, as those spaces schools won't be at capacity. So they won't be having as much money, especially with things of cost of living crisis and everything, food and lighting and everything else going up. Schools still have to pay for those things. So I do get the kind of competitive aspect of you have to be the best school, but actually it's just about teaching kids well. I feel like that part is quite often lost, especially with that competitive kind of academy versus academy. Like, it is about the kids and sharing good practice and being like, actually, I really like how you do that. I'm going to take that scheme of work and I'm going to develop it and make it work for my students. Or actually, I can just take that tiny little bit and then I'm going to absolutely fly in a completely different direction. But I don't care. If people want to take my ideas, take them and then develop them. I love seeing, like, because especially for me, it's quite weird because a lot of the kids I say kids, they're not kids, they're adults. A lot of the art teachers that I've trained over the years will go and take my schemes with them and take my ideas off to their new schools. And I love going and like then randomly bumping into them or randomly visiting and them still doing them. Like for me, I went back to a school that I taught at, 7-8 years ago. They are still teaching the schemes that I wrote with my friend when the two of us set up that school, because we were the first two teachers at that school and wrote the schemes of work, and they're still teaching them. And I just think like everyone, like it should be this collaborative development thing. It doesn't need to be reinventing the wheel. We have lots of really amazing stuff out there. We don't need to have this massive, like, every time there's a new thing. That's my worry with this new curriculum and this new panel and stuff, that is it going to be suddenly there's going to be like loads more work, everybody piling in. I'm hoping that it's done right, that it's this collaborative kind of exciting process with a lot of support, a lot of development, whether it be like, right, if we're going to we'll take a day off your holiday, but we'll pay all teachers for an extra day, so you get a whole day worth of planning. Like, add in some insets and pay us for them.
And some CPD, please.
Some actual quality CPD. Not that I'm just sitting and watching a video about how not to sexually harass somebody at work. I don't know. But
another online training, I can't.
How to climb a ladder. Like it's there isn't enough CPD time where people are genuinely kind of developing their curriculum, because I find like everything else, because it's like the marking, the report writing, the admin, the do this, do that, all of that side tends to take up, you have to give it to department time, you have to give it to PPA time. There's no actual like, this is, I want you to collaborate and fully kind of design something and work on something that you love and enjoy. And I think that's why teachers are leaving. They've not got the time to do the passion stuff.
Yeah, I think that, and I'm so with you on that. And I think that, to me, teaching is a team sport. I know we all kind of teach, we teach individually, but I think, as you say, and that is a large part of, I think, what's missing And I certainly think, again, in COVID, kind of everyone sort of, and I know I bring it up all the time, but we all kind of shut up shop. We all kind of went in on ourselves. It was survival mode. It was kind of every teacher for themselves. It was kind of, oh gosh, I just have to get through this, whatever it takes. And yeah, there were some lovely collaborative things that went on, but it was kind of, I did sort of feel I kind of had nowhere to go, and I just had to figure it out a lot of the time because everyone else was absolutely up to their eyeballs in it as well. And so I really do hope that we can kind of, treat it more as a team sport and more of as a together thing as well, because, this job is hard enough, and we talk about it a lot. If we're all turning on each other and kind of trying to one up each other, it just, it falls apart. But back to kind of curriculums. Well, we're doing what we always do, where we're going all over the place with it. So, we could go kind of up and down the sort of current national curriculum. I think the headlines for me are that it is outdated at this point, that I think there's a lot to be said for, knowledge is important and knowledge is a good thing. But I think, as you say, the skills side of it for me is what needs changing and updating and kind of bringing to the forefront, because it is those skills when we talk about, and again, we'll kind of come on to this more, but when we talk about there being more AI, there being more tech, there being more, and that's just one example, we need to be teaching kids to use this and to use it in a safe way and to use it effectively. Excuse me, well-being is more important than ever. Why is that? Why is PSHE still, kind of, can we be teaching empathy and things like that? It's a difficult one. Things like, I know oracy is kind of in at the moment, and I kind of want it to stay in, because whether it's, being able to present, or even one of my big things is about women being able to, you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room, and I've said this before, but being able to advocate for yourself in different situations, mixed situations where you are going to have to, whether you like it or not, be able to stand up for yourself, be able to assert yourself, be able to tell a story in an interview, be able to pitch, whatever it is, coupled in with, more other stuff that we'll come back to when we talk about dream curriculums. But I feel like the kind of knowledge versus skill balance for me is off at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of those that we just don't have a time to go into in-depth things, because a lot of things do fall onto teachers. We have to fix knife crime. We need to fix the mental health crisis. We need to counteract Donald Trump and Andrew Tate. So we've got Donald Trump calls it the Weebly ID, juggling 10 ideas at once. You guys do it better. I was watching a TED talk. I can't remember who it was by. Chloe Grace Laws. She was doing a TED talk on misandry myths, and I was like, I would love to play that to a class and really get the boys to understand what the difference is. It's not this kind of Andrew Tate them versus us kind of thing, and that we're just now equally getting rights, but it is the fact that we're more likely to be murdered, we're more likely to be attacked, we're more likely to have people say, and I love the movement at the moment, it's like, I said this to this guy because this is like, and the flip on it, and the men getting angry at that. But and I think unless we tackle it, we need to tackle it, and we need to have a bigger say in it. But there isn't that push on the curriculum to have those in-depth conversations. Like in my art at the moment, we're just doing a history of art project. We do it via Paul Giovanilopoulos. He does one object in the style of lots of artists, and we realised that actually all the artists he picked were old white men. And then I've introduced them to loads of different artists and new artists, and one of them is Adrian Brandon, and he paints Black people who have been murdered by the police, and he colours them for 1 minute for every year that they were alive, so they're incomplete paintings to show that their lives were cut short. And that's been a great conversation, and they remember that, and they were like, oh, he's the guy that painted George Floyd. I'm like, yeah. and like I've done Guerrilla Girls and how they protest about kind of women's rights, that they will have naked paintings of women in galleries, but they will not have female artists on exhibition. And there's like 85% of the paintings are women of nudes, but there's only like one female artist in the modern art section. Like it's, and looking, and then if you're an artist as well, you're well, women only get paid 2/3 of what a men do, but a female artist only gets paid 1/3, and actually, so it's even more difficult. And kind of, and I was like, have you guys heard of the gender pay gap? And they're like, no, what's that? And I had to explain it to them. Like, these are year nines, and no one's ever heard of gender pay gap. And it's like, if we want to change the world and want to kind of like make it better, like we need to be giving time to these discussions and making little minds that will think and want to improve and make it a better, fairer place for their brothers, sisters, future children, and want to improve it. And I love that, like, the kind of, I want like a next generation of Greta Thunbergs that really care about stuff and want
Sustainability
to
is
do
another one that
things.
needs to be much more of a, if we're talking
Yeah.
about curriculums, that needs to be, I know,
And what was the little girl who did she get a Nobel Peace Prize that got shot in the head?
What's her name?
I want to
Again,
say
I'm sure people screaming at us.
But yeah, I feel like they should be the people on the curriculum that we are learning about. Do you know what I mean? Like this should be a whole different curriculum. I'm going to invent my own curriculum tonight.
Well, that's what we're going to do.
There should be a whole. I think there should be a common affairs GCSE where it is talking about the media, talking about what is true, what is fake news. Here we go. Malala, there you go. Thank you, JBL. I knew you'd sort us out. And I just think this is one of the things, there's not enough room in the curriculum, but those kind of things are really important and cross over in so many other curriculums as well.
Well, the Beeb, the good old BBC, has, and I love her and I follow all her podcasts. That's probably me sort of saying things I shouldn't, but she's called Mariana Spring, and she is the disinformation and misinformation correspondent for the BBC. Now, in my mind, if the BBC deem it important enough for them to have a correspondent dedicated to disinformation and misinformation, we need to be, I mean, this is all part of critical thinking. This is all part of where your information is coming from. And in the information age, I'm sorry, again, as you say, if this is not part of the curriculum, of course you need to, but I do think, teachers generally are well informed, but also approaching this as something to, something to teach in their lessons, approaching the Andrew Tate thing, approaching things like the riots that happened in the summer. These are all things that, whether we like it or not, as teachers, I do think it is going to fall on us to address. But we need to be trained in a way that, means we feel comfortable doing that.
And I think it's quite an interesting one. I'm fascinated by this, but I think, who was it? Somebody was talking about it. There's an AI bot that is basically a anti-scammer, and they basically are on the phone to scammers who are trying to call and scam people. And their whole thing is these bots are meant to stay on the phone with the scammers as long as possible so they can't scam other people. And I just think, like, that is so fascinating. I'd love to teach the kids about that and how that works, and but also them learn about what scamming is and not get scammed and take that life skill themselves. And I think, like you said earlier about the AI, like, I really want to teach my kids about AI. Like, I use ChatGPT all the time. I use Copilot and all the others. And like, sometimes they're like, oh, I want to find out this, and I will get it up and I will do it. And I'm like, oh, what else do you want to know? And it's not cheating. Otherwise, they're sitting there Googling, they're going to copy and paste how many kids this artist had, and it's not relevant. I'm like, you tell me, what do you want to know? And I'll ask the question. So what else do you want to know about that artist? And then I will type in that question. What do you want to know about their technique? And they'll ask the question. And they're like, and then we print it out and they go through and they highlight it. And then they write their reflective piece, analysing the artwork, using the facts that they found out through me and them using AI. And I'm just like, that for me is so much better than them sitting and Googling random facts and copying stuff off Wikipedia. And yes, it's not always kind of accurate. There are like little bits in it, but they're having to think harder because they've got to think about the questions that they're asking it. So other people are like, it's doing the work for them. I was like, no, then they've got to think about what they're asking to get. What information do they need to know to be able to then do their written analysis? They need to know about the technique, the style, maybe what influenced them, and they're able to kind of ask those questions and take it forward. But I am doing that like on kind of a one-to-one gradually with my class as they're going through it. I would love to do a full let them all wild and kind of teach them how to properly use it. And I have had a kid come to me that was like, I need to apply for apprenticeship. It goes out because I'm careers leading. It expires today. I've never written a CV. What shall I write? And I'm like, okay, right. I've literally got 20 minutes for my lunch. This is going to be speedy. I'm like, right, co-pilot, tell me about yourself. And I'm typing in all the things that you tell me. What do you like to do? What did you do for your work experience? What things do you like about this apprenticeship? Tell me more about the apprenticeship. We'll copy the link in for the apprenticeship and add that in. And then it just reeled it all out. And I'm like, he's like, this is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, but it's nothing different to what somebody would do in the real world to do it. I was like, there's nothing on there that you can't do. It's all facts that you've just told me. It's just presented it really nicely and really quickly. Like, we don't need to be, as educators, kind of almost forcing kids into a world where they're at a disadvantage because they haven't been taught about it.
No, and I think that, yeah, the more you know, if you're not kind of including this or making this a large part, and I do hope, and I do think that in the sort of collection of information that's going to, I think the results from this kind of curriculum and assessment review, I think a lot of this is going to come out, and you know, because they've obviously asked teachers and they've asked lots of people to contribute to this. I just hope that what comes out on the back of that is, you know, understanding the importance that if we do not, you can't not, this is double negative, you can't not acknowledge, badly articulated, that this is going to be a large part of the world that these kids are going to end up in. And so in not including this as a large part of the curriculum and in not kind of teaching them how to use it effectively and safely, you are setting them up to fail.
I think it's just an important skill as teaching them about sexting, as teaching about how to use AI and how to use it correctly, where misinformation comes from and things like that. I'm intrigued by the panel. I have a slight confession. I may have applied to be on said panel and did not get even through the first round. But obviously there's some very great people from education in that panel. I would have preferred some people that were still more in education, in the classroom, teaching right now, and have more teacher voices. I think they're all very good at what they've done, but there are lots of people that have their own agendas, that have done their own things as well. I think it would have been nice to have almost like more people and have real people that are in the classrooms. I know my sister's a Senko and she's had chats with the government and stuff since they changed. They wanted to know her experience and things that are going on. So I know they are reaching out and speaking to teachers that are very much on the ground. But I would have loved to have seen a whole all teacher panel, like nobody that is not full-time in education right now. Like, that would be insane. Like, and make sure they're in all different parts of the country, not just cities, from rurals, little places, from like have somebody from the Scilly Isles and have them like just have proper just all teachers that are full-time teachers and not necessarily all SLT. The middle leaders are the hubs really of the school. Get all your middle leaders, the people that are on the ground that are teaching day in, day out, not the SLT that just do 5 lessons a week, like the people that are with the kids day in, day out. And I feel like, would that produce, obviously we don't know what's come from it, but would that produce a different outcome, do you think?
For sure. I mean, I don't see, I mean, I'm sort of very onto the double negative, but it couldn't not. I know that's terribly badly articulated, but I'm tired. Leave me alone. I'm sure there are people going, these people are teachers and she can't even articulate properly. Yes, I can.
We let loose. Right. We spend all day articulating beautifully, and then Yeah.
Many of the big cigars, I love that, in education have forgotten what it's like to teach every day. They have. It's true. They are out of touch, unfortunately. And I do think there are, and again, we can't tarnish everyone with the same brush, but there are SLT teams out there who are very, very good and who are doing their damnedest, doing good, doing kind of, what some would say is the Lord's work, depending on your belief system. But there are also those who there is a very us and them culture. So I think, as you rightly say, the truth, if you like, the crux of everything lies with the people who are on the ground doing it every day. And if you're not asking them, then you are making a grave error. And actually, it doesn't make the information irrelevant, but it's certainly, it has an agenda and an angle, doesn't it? Of course it does.
It's all very interesting, but I do think it has to be the right middle leader, a middle leader that likes to read and stay up to date with educational research, because it has to be somebody that's kind of out there learning and always developing. And if you're one of those, then don't forget we've got our lovely sponsors at John Cat Educational, and you can pop over to johncatbookshop.com and use our code JCTR 2425. I can't articulate now, and you get 20% off your order. And I just think it's really important that kind of we as teachers aren't, I say this quite a lot, that we don't get stagnant. You don't just sit there. You are kind of reading and listening to the most amazing podcasts out there, and kind of developing and learning and seeing what other people are doing. And I think it is, like we said, it's one of those, it should be a really collaborative place. And I think obviously John Cat is amazing at kind of publishing these great books, and people sharing their best practice is really good. And obviously our other sponsors as well, we've got Parent Kind, which are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. And I think that is the other coin to it. I feel like, I've said it before, there's very much a them versus us, and I don't think the media helps with that. And I do think the best schools have the parents on board. And I think it is a really important one. So do check them out at parentkind.org, because I think if you can get that right and get parents involved, it can really help. I remember I interviewed, I'm throwing names around, I interviewed Tom Sherrington last January about his book, and it was talking about, which is John Cat Bookshop book, so you can go get your discount on it, and that was all about kind of getting kids to study, but we talked about parental engagement in it, and he was like, this is a great one for parents to kind of not just be like, oh yeah they're sat there with a book, they're studying, but actually be able to understand whether they're actually studying properly, because I think I just read textbooks when I was that age and hoped for the best. But we talked about kind of doing workshops with parents, getting parents into schools, collaborating with that. And I think that's something that the government can help with, not necessarily the national curriculum, but certainly with almost making the media be nicer to teachers and being supportive and not putting this pressure on. I do question, I know I'm going off topic, but obviously there's the attendance stuff that's going to come along as well, and that pressure, is that going to further put that divide between parent and teachers? I don't know, but I think having a curriculum where parents can see why the kids are learning what they're learning is really important.
Not gatekeeping it either. I think there's a lot of gatekeeping
and actually kind of like,
or otherwise.
I've got a really beautiful, thorough lesson by lesson kind of curriculum, but obviously all the schools I've been at have got like big pictures where you just write a couple of words and put it on, and that's, I know that no parent is going to go, well, you taught that lesson instead of that lesson, but I would love for them to see my whole entire curriculum, lesson by lesson, year by year, the whole shebang, and be like, if you really want to take an interest, this is what I'm teaching your kid. Here are the examples of what they will be doing in each lesson. Because in secondary school, it kind of does go a bit the other way. You don't really see their books and see what they're doing as much. And I just think having that parental engagement in what you're teaching as well can really help.
Oh, most definitely. Now, with the time that we have got left, Hannah, I want to sort of go a bit kind of whimsical and sort of, well, actually, I don't know, it might not be whimsical at all. You might have some very hard lines on this, but, and I know we've kind of dotted about a bit here as per, but if you were in charge, and we've kind of touched on bits of this already, if you were in charge and in an ideal world, and you don't have to kind of sort of go down right to the nitty gritty, but if you were going to build a curriculum for either the school you're in right now or just in general, what would be your absolute kind of, and I'm going to use a phrase you're going to hate, but your non-negotiables?
My non-negotiables. I'm going to go full power. I'm going to kick everything out. So if I was to start afresh, have a complete fresh thing,
Okay,
I would have a kind of, I don't like, this isn't the right word for it, but I would want a kind of life skills, kind of everyday kind of unit curriculum at the start. And I do think that should be something that's like maybe 2 hours a week are devoted to that, where it is talking in detail, like we said a bit before, about kind of what's going on in the media, kind of healthy kind of things that kind of go against like Andrew Tate kind of style vibes, like what, and get them to actually learn about kind of the context of what is going on in the world, what is a good person, what kind of rules and things actually mean and how they apply and why we have them, and actually had that talk about democracy and stuff, but in more detail, not like we vote and these people get voted in and they pick and we pay taxes, but like actually break it down, because actually it's quite scary when you look at it and like and to follow on from that, I would also have a financial life skill unit in the full, which I will write personally along with Martin Lewis together, and change the world so that they can learn about kind of mortgage rates and credit card rates and debt and tax. Because actually, when you start breaking down tax, it's really kind of, obviously we pay income tax, national insurance tax, you get your car and you pay car tax, and then you get petrol and you pay tax on your petrol, and it's like,
and VAT.
Do any kids actually realize you go in and buy your drink and then you get your sugar tax, and it's like, do the kids actually realize how the world is run and how our country is run and financially how that affects us and how you could change things, and get them to maybe even look at the country and be like, you've got this budget, how would you apply it to these different areas? And I think then maybe people might be slightly more respectful of teachers and schools and police officers and hospitals and stuff, if they understand kind of how hard it is to kind of balance those and how the government have to do that. So I think like kind of having that life skills, because certainly I never understood mortgages until I rocked up to get my mortgage appointment, and the guy drew me a diagram and I'm like, why has nobody shown me this before? And like interest rates and how they change depending on the size of your deposit and the percentage of it versus your house, and how when the base rate works and how if that influences the rates of your mortgage, or variable and interest only and buy to let, and actually really, and especially credit cards, because it's I went to university, I got my credit card, they gave me an overdraft, I blew that overdraft so quick you couldn't even see it disappear, and then they extended it and I went, yep, that's going to go as well. And I had no concept, and I spent years trying to pay. I think I had £2,000 in my overdraft by the end of the first year of uni, and just by them just giving it to me. And obviously uni's difficult. It's really tough, especially I think with the younger generation with the cost of living crisis. I've got my nephew at university, and how on earth he's managing to fund it is beyond me kind of talking through it. And obviously I had Ben West on the other year as well, talking about mental health and things, and the statistics he has for like kids committing suicide at university is really high, because they're going to university, they don't know how to finance, they don't know how to budget, they are going and getting in debt, they can't cope, and I think that's just, we're not putting them in a good place to be able to go and do that and survive and thrive, and even more so on the disadvantage, because they haven't got parents that are going to bail them out and things, and they drop out and things. So it's really important that we're kind of financially teaching our kids. And I do think also there should be, so I think there should be an hour, I'm going to go an hour on kind of current affairs every week as a proper lesson, not like one of these, I'm going to shoehorn this into tutor time after I've read out the notices, after I've done the register, after I've read out X, Y, and Z, after I've given house points, after I've handed out equipment, I'm then going to do it. I'm like, no, this needs to be a proper hour. I would like a proper hour on like financial maths for everyday life, and also a mental health hour where we
Yes.
talk about the different things that are going on in kids' lives. We talk about kind of what is going on, how it is normal. And I think most of the issues with the anxiety that is happening in young people now is because they think they're the only ones. They think they're the only ones that doesn't want to go up and get worked. We know we both don't want to really get up and go to work. We just have to pay the bills and we've got more motivation to do it. But like also like kind of and going into that healthy eating, because like food has dropped off as a subject. But actually kind of health, how to eat healthily is really important, like having high protein diets and exercise and kind of understanding that impact and how dopamine works and how it boosts our mind. And actually, if we go for a walk and go outside when we're feeling down, that can actually boost us. And journaling and showing gratitude, and actually every week to have a little bit of a gratitude moment where the kids can actually be quiet and reflect on themselves rather than constant pressure towards them. And then I also think like we need to have more sport in schools. I do think there needs to be more things like I was sporty at school. I was swimming, so I just hid in swimming and never did another sport, which was quite nice. But actually teaching girls to be strong and lift weights in the gym, like my 17-year-old niece has done her PT course and she's teaching me how to lift and how to do my form and how many sets I need to do before I put up my weights. And like I just think, and she's been through so much. She's got a lung condition and has got a portacath, and she's in and out of, she attended school 50% and still nailed her GCSEs. Like I'm so proud of her, but it's because she has that resilience and that she's built that mental health. But it wasn't easy to get there, and it was very hard, and it took a lot of support and a lot of people to get her there. And I don't think every kid is lucky enough to have that support around them. And actually, we need to implement it in school and build these skills that kids can have so they're able to do it. So that would be my core curriculum. And then they can do a bit of maths and English either side of that, and some science. They need to have, I think the hours should be evened out. So with our music and our art and our drama, if you can nail drama in your oracy, you're going to go on and be able to present and have interviews and do really great things. Like
public speaking.
Music is all about talking and enjoying. Like,
it's just Tank or Dragon's Den type pitches. It's great.
Like get them kids presenting and problem solving and showing initiative. I don't think it should be like an hour in English, an hour in maths every single day. I think it's too much. And I think actually when you feed these hours into other things, I think they will naturally move into the other subjects and help the kids. The kids' maths and English will improve if they're doing financial literacy for everyday life, if they're doing discussions and written assignments on topics in everyday life or things that are happening in the world. That is going to improve their written debate, and I think it will feed into the other subjects. So we don't need to feel like, oh my god, they're not going to be able to do that. I think it will still happen, but that's fine.
I actually I actually asked ChatGPT this as well, and a lot of kind of what got spat back was a lot of what you've already said. But I don't know if this would happen, but one of the things I thought was quite interesting was flexible scheduling or timetabling, but I don't know how that would begin to work. Primary, maybe not so well, but again, I don't know. Yes, I definitely agree with all that you've said. I want a lot of emphasis on digital literacy. Again, feeding into what you said about, learning about the world, that disinformation and misinformation, how to navigate, because these kids are the online generation, and I don't think any of them really, or a lot of them don't really understand half the time what it is they're looking at. And let's face it, I know people are talking about the social media age being raised to 16. Even if that does happen, it's not going to kick in for a while. And even if it does happen, there are still going to be people navigating around that. So why aren't we addressing those things? Why aren't we kind of talking about that and, explaining, and not necessarily sort of all the bad? We know that there are many positives that can come from social media when utilized properly. We know that connections can be made, jobs can be found. It's these kind of things that you know, when you equip children, or indeed anybody, with the knowledge of how to use something and how to use it well and how to use it safely, I do think great things can happen. And I'm going down my little whimsical sort of path there as well. Entrepreneurial skills, and again, I don't think this needs to just start in secondary. I think you're going to see in the world more and more people starting, you know, not joining kind of big businesses and corporations, starting up their own things, and you know, navigating the world that way. And those skills, again, you know, when talking about kind of little Dragon's Den or Shark Tank type pitches, I think I've talked about this before, a chocolate project with year 4, where they designed, made, and then pitched to us as teachers, and they loved it. And they're 8 and 9 years old. But a lot of, I mean, of course, we're not doing it in kind of sort of business speak as such, but it still showed what was possible and what they could do. And there was very little kind of input from us. And I do think that, again, teachers kind of maybe in some respects looking at themselves as more facilitators. I mean, I know we kind of, again, have sort of tried to move away from, or most of us now have moved away from that kind of, you know, didactic sort of
teacher talk thing. Yeah.
Actually being able to, and actually when Paul Hazard and I talked to the Economist Education Foundation, and we were talking about their lessons linked to you know, talking about the news and things like that. A lot of that was trying to get teachers to say, okay, you're there as a facilitator, but you also need to learn to step back and, you know, organically allow things to happen and allow for that discovery. And I think a lot of that has been lost as well, because we're also can't say that, can't talk about that, can't, you know, because, you know, don't want to get into trouble, don't want to get them into trouble, don't want parents coming after me. Whereas if there was more of a kind of, actually, this is part of the curriculum, this is part of what kids are going to learn, kind of, you know, they need to know the hard stuff. We can't sort of sugarcoat it forever. I think it would be, and again, maybe I'm being too idealistic, I don't know, in that sense.
No, I think I completely agree. I think it's important as well that the kids know how our brains work, so they can see why they're so lured into watching these videos, what the dopamine does to them, how certain things, like I always joke that Norwich University Arts do, I think it's interactive user degree. And I was like, oh, I'd love to go back and do that. If I was to pick one and do one again, that would be it. It's like so fascinating. Like the color red on our alerts is a specific shade of red that makes us more likely to click on it. And I think it's that kind of like, knowledge is power, isn't it? The more knowledge we can give kids into how it works, the more they can then make the decisions for themselves. Like I have a lovely group that I attend and stuff that in the summer we do summer social paddles, and now in the winter they've done an out there thing. So once a month we all meet, and you can either go paddleboarding, walking, cycling, or running, and then we all meet. So everyone does that for the first hour. Second hour, everyone hangs out and has hot chocolates and roast marshmallows by the fire, and it's lovely. But I think kids have kind of like they interact over social media and interact over devices, like making them read, and then they don't understand why they're feeling down, or they drink all these sugary drinks and prime and stuff, and they don't get why they then feel low or angry, or they stay up all night gaming and don't sleep, and then don't understand why they're so tired and cross the next day. Like it is kind of, and I think that's one of those things that comes with age. The more we learn about things, the more we kind of are able to make better decisions and cope better. But I am a strong believer that if we teach this kind of thing earlier on to our kids, we give them the skills that we learn through having rubbish stuff happens to us and how to cope, because we've had to cope. If I wish I knew the things then that I know now, and that could help me in so many different ways. And I just, I don't know whether it is one of those that it can massively change things, but I believe that it could. I believe strongly that it could. And I almost feel like educating kids on that kind of thing is more important than the actual curriculum, which has kind of popped our whole bubble show.
But yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, but I also, and maybe I'm just in a kind of, you know, whimsical mood, but I really hope that this is some of what comes out, and these are some of the changes that do happen. I don't suspect, I mean, I don't think traditional teaching of the and I'm going to call them traditional subjects in inverted commas, is going to go anywhere entirely. And, you know, I would never want to rain on any subject, because I think, you know, all the current ones we have do have, you know, validity and do have an important place. But I think maybe within the realms of these traditional subject titles, what's being taught and what, you know, is part of that needs to be adapted. So if we're going to take maths and you know, wrap financial literacy into that, if we're going to take, you know, geography, for example, put in the global perspectives, put in human rights, put in, and of course bits of these things are already there, but it does need a shove into you know, this century, given, you know, everything that's gone on. And I do think that there should be curriculum reviews. I mean, I think probably every 5 years is a bit steep. I don't think that would ever happen, but certainly every decade at least, this should be up for review, up for discussion. What's changed? Because nothing's slowing down.
No.
And otherwise it's just going to be forever playing catch up.
And that's the thing. I think and that was a bit with Gove, wasn't it? He wanted to go back and do things the old fashioned way and do things. And actually, no, we need to develop and change and adapt. And we have, in the fact that there's been lots of research and we know so much more about the way students learn and how they retain information. But it's to the point where we're now like trying to factory turn out kids that can reel out answers to a test. And actually we need to go back to what it is about and making sure it's about the students. But also, most importantly, especially with our show, it needs to be about the teachers. They need to love what they're teaching and enjoy what they're teaching and see it have a positive impact on the kids. Because if we're stressed and working all these hours and it's not having the impact that we want, then teachers are going to leave. And it needs to be a positive experience for kids and teachers. And the one thing I'd love to see, like I quite enjoy the deep dive process, and I know that that's kind of changing and moving, but that opportunity for me to reel off exactly why I'm teaching, what the kids get out of it, why I love what I teach, and all the extra bits that I've added in, and why it's rich and knowledge and full of debate and lots of skills and lots of kind of different things that the kids learn. I think that is actually a really good, going back to like our point that we need lots of CPD and inset time to be able to do this kind of thing. Pair your heads of departments or pair your staff off that are on the same level but different subjects, and get them to really explain their curriculum and why they teach what they teach, and like get them to have that passionate conversation. If your teachers can't say why you're teaching what you're teaching and what the benefits are and what the kids get out of it and what they learn from it, then something is going wrong in your school in terms of what you're doing and why you're doing it and what's going on. But I just think like that is such a great exercise that I would start. So even if this national curriculum comes to fruition and there are some changes, I would start there. Get your teachers to really talk to each other, watch them go off, wander around the room and kind of really listen to them passionately, articulately explain why they planned everything the way that it has in the sequence that it's done, so that you know what's working, what isn't. Because we'll also be hypercritical of ourselves and we'll go, oh, no, I know full well that's the bit that if I had to change anything, that's the bit that doesn't quite work, that's the bit where I take it out. But then we can work out our strengths and weaknesses and do it. But it shouldn't be this kind of different subjects and different levels of importance. And I would love to go toe to toe with like the maths department as to what my subject can bring and how important it is, and why I teach what I teach and the sequence that I teach and what the kids get out of it. Because I reckon I proper give them a run for their money. But we should as teachers feel that about our curriculum. We should be excited to teach what we're teaching, and we should know that what we're teaching is really benefiting our students. And I think so I'm hoping that it will change it and really become this positive thing that it needs to be, because teaching is hard and it is struggling at the moment, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel. If they've listened into this, please listen.
Yeah, let's hope it. Or we're going to end up on the DFE's list somewhere as troublemakers.
I was like, did Brent ever get his freedom of information request? Did we find out whether they were what they had on it?
I don't think they sent it to him. I did ask him about it quite recently and I don't think he got there. So DFE, if you're listening, we're really not as, we're really not as problematic as you think we are. You've probably got better things to be doing with your time. And I probably shouldn't be calling out government agencies while we're live across multiple platforms. But I think that's a great place to leave it, Hannah. So let's see what happens. Let's see how the results of this research. Hammer Hannah versus what was that? Versus maths
marmalizers. I will take them down. I mean, I love maths. I like. There's a place for everything, and that's the thing. I think like the hierarchy of subjects needs to go, but that's a whole nother show.
Yes, I mean we could go on, couldn't we? But if you are after more Teachers Talk Radio content, I just had a very, very quick through X to find out who is well, I know that it is Catherine Taylor on next, but she is talking about, speaking of, kind of ties in nicely with what we've been talking about in a way, teacher professional identities and retention. And she's joined by Nathan Douglas, who is a deputy head teacher and also Ed D candidate, because I know that I don't know if Catherine's actually finished hers now or is on the tail end of it. And so yeah, they're going to be having a conversation over on, I believe, Podbean, starting now, which means that we need to tootle off, I'm afraid. But we'll be back next week with another topic to dissect and wander off on tangents about. But in the meantime, thank you again to our sponsors, Parent Kind and John Catt Educational. And we'll do it all again next week, Hannah.
We will indeed. If anyone wants to become a host and they've been inspired and have enjoyed listening to us rant on and maybe are like, yeah, I want to do that too, then we've got some spaces as well. So do get in touch. Or maybe you just want to come and join me and Lucy. You're like, actually, you guys look like great fun. We want to come and join in the conversation. That looks like the best way to spend my Tuesday night. Then do drop us a message, because you can come and join in the conversation. We'll talk about whatever you want to. Trust me, our ability to fill an hour and a half on any topic in education is...
Oh, I don't know if we should put that challenge out there.
I thought when I started hosting, I'd run out of things to talk about. But oh no, I'm like, I think I'm not far off my 2-year anniversary. I think I'm almost there. I need to check the date of it, but I think it's not far off. So... yeah, and then you'll be down the rabbit hole and you'll be with us.
And I'm 3.5 years in and I'm still not running out of things. So,
but yeah, enjoy the last few weeks of work and we will see you again soon.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused